You wake up. The temperature is perfectly set. There are no predators lurking outside. Food and water are absolutely limitless. You never have to work a single day in your life. Every possible physical need is met instantly. Sounds like heaven, right? For 99% of human history, this was the ultimate dream. But for a colony of 3,800 mice, this exact scenario became a terrifying nightmare. It was the perfect recipe for a bizarre and entirely self-inflicted apocalypse. We spend our entire lives trying to completely eliminate struggle. But what if struggle is the very thing keeping our brains intact? To understand why, we have to go back to 1968. A researcher named John B. Calhoun decided to play God. He built Universe 25, a massive 9-foot square enclosure in a warehouse. It was a flawless utopia designed exclusively for mice. There was no disease, no harsh weather, and no predators. Just hundreds of cozy nesting boxes and endless tubes of food. Calhoun dropped in 4 healthy pairs of mice. At first, it was a massive success. The population doubled every 55 days. Then, the dream turned dark. The entire society collapsed. And here is the most terrifying part of this whole experiment. They didn't die from a mutated virus. They didn't starve to death. They just stopped acting like mice, willingly choosing extinction. The obvious answer is overcrowding, right? You'd think they just ran out of physical space, but that is completely wrong. Universe 25 was designed to easily hold nearly 4,000 mice. The population peaked at just over 2,200. They never ran out of physical room. They ran out of social room. Calhoun famously named this phenomenon the behavioral sink. It was like a cruel game of musical chairs, but instead of running out of chairs, the mice ran out of meaningful jobs. When a mouse has no social role, no territory to defend, no foraging to do, no purpose, their evolutionary programming simply short-circuits. By day 315, the social structure of the utopia fractured completely. The dominant male mice became hyper-aggressive. They formed roving gangs, wandering the enclosure and attacking others without provocation. Pointless violence became their only active outlet. Others swung the opposite way. The dropouts gathered in massive, motionless piles in the center, just staring blankly into space. Maternal instincts completely dissolved. Overstressed mothers simply abandoned their pups in the middle of the floor, unable to handle the social overload. Imagine a packed subway train where everyone's brain is constantly screaming, fight or flight. But there's no exit and nothing real to fight. Calhoun's paper detailed how this constant, unavoidable, and unwanted social contact completely broke their nervous systems. The friction of survival was gone. The mice had lost the cognitive ability to navigate complex social webs. They were physically alive, but behaviorally and socially dead. But the hyper-violent gangs weren't the most disturbing part of Universe 25. The most terrifying mice were the ones who did absolutely nothing. In the final, most chilling stages of the societal collapse, a completely new class of mouse emerged. Calhoun famously named them the beautiful ones. These mice, predominantly males, withdrew entirely from the chaotic society. They claimed the highest nesting boxes, isolating themselves from the madness below. They absolutely refused to fight for territory. They refused to court females or mate. They did exactly 3 things: eat, sleep, and groom. Their coats were flawless, completely lacking the scars, bitten tails, and missing fur of the other mice. Physically, they were perfect specimens. But Calhoun noted they were essentially empty shells. They had no concept of social interaction, problem-solving, courtship, or parenting. They were the mouse equivalent of permanent doomscrollers. So why does absolute comfort create such empty monsters? The answer is hiding in their brains. Most people think dopamine is just the happy hormone, But neuroscientists know it's actually the motivation molecule. It's an anticipation engine. Think of dopamine like a biological GPS. Its entire evolutionary job is to guide you through a difficult maze to find survival. When you're hungry, cold, or in danger, this GPS lights up, giving you the urgent drive to solve those problems. But in Universe 25, there is no maze. You just spawn directly on top of a giant pile of cheese. With absolutely no problems to solve and no rewards to chase, the GPS simply crashes. The brain's motivation circuitry physically atrophies. Scientists call this the reward prediction error. Our brains are literally hardwired to expect friction. Take away that friction, and the system breaks. Without struggle, the mice didn't just get lazy. They lost the fundamental ability to care about anything. This is why the beautiful ones spent all day grooming themselves. It was a mindless, repetitive loop just to cope with a dead GPS. It's eerily similar to how we endlessly scroll through social media when understimulated. We seek cheap dopamine because the real drive is gone. Utopia forced the mice into two terrifying extremes: invent artificial problems through mindless violence, or shut down completely and withdraw from society. By day 600, new births crashed entirely to zero. And even when Calhoun removed some mice and placed them in normal environments, they still refused to mate or interact. The psychological damage was permanent. They had literally forgotten how to be mice. Shortly after, the last surviving member of Universe 25 died of old age. The perfect paradise had a 100% mortality rate. Calhoun's experiment sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Urban planners and sociologists looked at our rapidly growing, crowded cities in absolute horror. Are human cities just giant versions of Universe 25? Are we doomed to become beautiful ones? Well, yes and no. The short answer is no. Mice are biologically hardwired with a very limited instruction manual. They rely entirely on physical space and roles. When you take away their ability to forage, defend territory, or mate, they literally have nothing else to do. Their biological software crashes. Human beings operate on a completely different level. We don't just live in physical space, we live in infinite cultural space. When we run out of physical roles, we just invent new ones. We create art, build internet communities, and explore deep science. You don't need to fight off a predator to find purpose. You can just become a competitive speed cuber or a niche podcaster. This infinite cognitive flexibility to generate new meaning is our ultimate defense mechanism against the terrifying void of the behavioral sink. However, Calhoun's warning shouldn't be ignored entirely. Because while high population density won't destroy us, a complete lack of purpose absolutely will. We are currently building a hyper-convenient world that tries to eliminate all friction. Instant food, instant entertainment, instant cheap dopamine. And when you look closely, you can clearly see eerie echoes of the beautiful ones appearing in our own modern society. Take the rising phenomenon of severe social withdrawal, like Hikikomori, where young people completely lock themselves in their comfortable bedrooms for years. They are physically safe, well-fed, and protected. Yet, they are completely disconnected from the necessary social friction that keeps brains healthy. It turns out, the human brain evolved to climb steep mountains, not to just sit lazily forever at the summit. When you completely remove the mountain, the brain's prediction engine panics. It gets bored and starts hallucinating artificial cliffs to worry about. This perfectly explains why, in the safest, most comfortable era in human history, we are experiencing record-breaking levels of modern anxiety. We designed our modern world to be a frictionless utopia, without realizing that our deeply wired biology secretly craves the struggle. To avoid the fate of Universe 25, we have to recognize that friction isn't just an obstacle. It's the building block of meaning. We need projects. We need hobbies that are slightly too difficult. We need to voluntarily put ourselves in the path of resistance. 'Cause if you don't give your brain a mountain to climb, it will eventually build its own cage to rot inside. So the next time you're stuck in traffic, stressed about a tight deadline, or fighting through a frustratingly difficult problem, take a deep breath. That friction isn't ruining your life. In a world designed to be a frictionless paradise, that struggle might be the very thing keeping you human. Because without it, we are just waiting to become beautiful ones in a cage of our own making. It's worth noting that Calhoun's direct comparisons to human cities are still heavily debated by sociologists today. Science is always rewriting itself. Subscribe to Primal Canvas, where we decode the weird wiring of the human animal every week. See you next time.